Mona thought the stones that she worked in were alive. She believed that.
My artistic interest was very much rooted in the idea of drawing and painting. The journey of creation is like being pregnant, and then you're giving birth. And at one point, as a mother, you do have to let go.
Do you think of these as two distinct periods in your career? Like, I was making tabbouleh and now I'm making fattoush, but they're basically the same thing?
Come on, tabbouleh and fattoush are the same thing. Mona and her sculptures are one. They are one and the same. She is as tough as her sculptures. She grew up in a very conservative home. She was 16, 17. She had in her mind that to become an artist, you had to go to Paris. Her father wouldn't hear of it, of course. So she got in a cab from Amman to Beirut, staged a little show, and the money that she got, she boarded a vessel that took her to Marseille, and then from Marseille, she got to Paris. For a woman, an Arab woman in the 60s to do that, I mean, you need to be Teflon.
Welcome to another episode of the Art Library Podcast. My name is Mikey Myrna. As you know, this series features the work of two artists, and we look into the lives and the work of those artists by having conversations. Today, we have two special guests, as always. We have Filwa Nazer and Myrna Ayad. And we're talking about the work of Filwa and Mona Saoudi, who unfortunately is no longer with us, Allah yarhamah. And so I'm really, really excited to have both of you here to talk about the work of these two incredible artists. Welcome.
Thank you, Mikey.
First of all, Filwa, I want to start with you. I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you were approached to be featured in this book series, and how did you think about it when you were first approached?
Well, I was approached by Basma Shidri from Misk and Cecilia Ruggieri, who worked very closely with me on editing the book and organizing it, and it was exciting, to be honest, to be included in this art series. It's I'm sure for every artist, it's a great honor to have their work documented. So this is actually the first book that documents my work with a focus on the textile works, but it's a very nice introduction, I would say, to my
Amazing.
work.
Were you aware that the pairing between your book and Mona Saoudi's book would be in that same slip cover together?
Yes, of course. They explained what is the format from the beginning, and of course, again, it's a great honor to be, joined with the great Mona Saoudi. I did not know her personally, but I would like to say here that I did kind of meet with her, but was not introduced to her. At the time, I did my residency at Sharjah Art Foundation in 2019. I think she had a solo or exhibition at Sharjah Museum, and I would see her around. She was always doing something in the museum, and but yes, we didn't speak.
Yeah.
It was really, I think I was just a little bit shy to approach her.
Yeah, I feel like that's normal. Myrna, what about you? I'm curious about your sort of initial involvement. Obviously, you've written extensively on so many artists in the region and done so much across the art world for decades. How did you think about this initial pairing when you were first approached to be involved?
I kind of like it. As a concept, I do like the pairing of a contemporary and a modern artist. I like that they're both women. And Filwa, if I may, I do think Filwa's work is sculpture. Um, I think she actually sculpts these fabrics. I've had the pleasure of seeing them in different exhibitions and biennials, and they sit like sculptures do. Many people might refer to them as installations, but for me, they feel like sculptures. So I think that works.
It's interesting. So, Filwa, like I want to sort of talk a little bit about your personal journey and your entry way into this career, into this life that you've lived. Can you talk a little bit about some of your early experiences drawing as a child and how that developed into what is now your practice?
Well, I was always drawing as a child. And at one point in school, I was like the designated person that does all kinds of these illustrations for the class. It was very natural expression for me. Although later on I did, less of drawing and more, as Myrna said, sculptures or installations, and working also with printing and collage when I started out. But, at the base of it, when my artistic interest was very much rooted in the idea of drawing and painting. So yeah, that's how it started at an early age.
Were you encouraged?
Yes, actually, very much encouraged by my father always, because he liked to draw. He never really pursued this, but it's something that he was good at when he was young. And I think it's a shame he really didn't continue that as a hobby either. But I think in a way that kind of, he understood my interest in it and he encouraged it. Yeah.
Yeah. Mona, what was your first experience with Mona's work? Myrna, what was your first experience with Mona's work?
Well, I mean, I'd been seeing her work at so many exhibitions in Dubai and abroad, and then everywhere. Galleries, people's homes, Beirut. You passed through by her house, like in Hamra. You couldn't miss it. So I'd seen her work many times.
If you were to describe her work to a 15-year-old, so somebody, let's say a 15-year-old in Beirut, in Hamra, who's like, I knew this woman's my neighbor. I have no idea what she does. How would you describe Mona to a 15-year-old?
Mona and her sculptures are one. They are one and the same. She is as tough as her sculptures. She really was. She really was. She was a tough woman, and she had. Mikey. She had to be. I remember hearing that. She grew up in a very conservative home. Okay, in Amman, and when she was 16, 17, she had in her mind that Paris was the place to be. To become an artist, you had to go to Paris. And her father wouldn't hear of it, of course, the conservative outlook that he had. So she got in a cab from Amman to Beirut at 17, left a note and said, I'm going to Beirut. And she hung out in Beirut for a bit, but mingled with the cultural intelligentsia of the time, the Basbous brothers, Paul Garagossian, and then staged a little show with some works, and the money that she got gave her enough so she boarded a vessel that took her to Marseille, and then from Marseille she got to Paris. Okay, for for a woman, an Arab woman in the 60s to do that, I mean, you need to be Teflon.
It's amazing.
Courageous.
Yeah. Wait, Filwa, did you know this story?
I read her biography in the Misk book, in the art library book.
Did you know of her work? Like when you were earlier on in your career, were you like, these are my shining sort of North Stars. These are the people who give me courage and give me sort of the blueprint?
When I think about it, I don't know, at what age I would maybe articulate that, but I was not aware of many Arab artists when I was young here in Saudi, I have to say. And when I started thinking about art and painting, it was through travels abroad, mostly to Europe, and, looking at the classics and, museums and the sort. So my exposure to Arab artists kind of came later. It came maybe in my 20s, also more probably in my 30s and 40s. I lived in London at different times in my life, and also I was exposed to a lot of Arab art there, and in a strange way, but you have the mosaic rooms in London, for example, that also showed a lot of contemporary Arab art and the sort. But Mona Sorodi, I did not know her until much later. I always came across her drawings, I think, either in books or in like group exhibitions through my travels, but I did not really, I was not aware of her sculptures until that exhibition in Sharjah, actually. So, and that's probably the first time I saw them up close. Kind of nice to actually also see her around that exhibition, because I was in that location for quite a while. So I was in and out of the museum and I would see her around. I actually loved the sculptures so much. As you say, yes, because she's working with stone, it's tough to actually work with stone or such a material, but the lines are very soft as well. It's I would say the lines are female.
They're organic. They feel very organic.
It's very organic. It's also about the female experience, like motherhood, for example, which is a recurring theme in her work. So you feel that energy. It's that tension between the hard material or tool versus the tender subject matter.
Mona thought the stones that she worked in were alive. She believed that. She believed that she was just releasing,
Their energy.
Yeah, that she really felt that they were beings, and she would refer to them as such.
I can imagine that as an artist.
Yeah, I bet you can.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to embody Myrna,
Yeah.
You have to attempt that embodiment experience.
I could never understand how you guys are okay with, I know it's such a cliche thing to ask or to say, but then when it comes to selling them, I don't know how you do it, because I know that they're an extension of you. It's like a limb, right? You've like slaved over this. You've given it everything. It's really a piece of you, and then it's in someone else's house or sitting in some exhibition.
Maybe it's, I'm sure a lot of artists speak about that, especially women artists, that the journey of creation is like being pregnant and then you're giving birth, so they're in a way kind of part of you, like your children. And at one point, as a mother, you do have to let go.
I have a question about if this was a learned approach to your work, Filwa. Like earlier on in your training, earlier on in your career, did you have the same level of sort of tranquility or sort of Zen approach to this type of work, or did you have sort of a more controlling, or maybe just I'll be a little like kinder, like, were you scared? Were you more scared early on in your career about letting go and sort of going with the flow in that way?
This question really makes me smile because, I'm never Zen. This is the truth. Never, ever. And I wish I was. And there's always fear. And I have to say, yes, I do have, some control, or I practice some control to protect the work here and there, especially in loans when I want to make sure it's installed properly, it's presented properly, the handling, So when you're working with an entity or institution that you completely trust, of course, it's a much relaxed experience. But again, you can't always have that full picture.
Myrna, I want to talk about Myrna, the themes that she felt that she wanted to explore with her art. Were there specific themes that she kept on coming back to and just couldn't sort of get away from because it just really was evergreen and just kept on giving her new ideas and new problems worth exploring and feelings worth expressing?
Well, I mean, as Filwa mentioned, the mother and child theme was something she went back to time and again. Mona was also very, very politically motivated. When she was in Paris, the 1967 war broke out, and she felt, like many Arabs, very strongly about it. Enough for her to leave without finishing her studies and go to Amman and volunteer in a refugee camp. And so she worked with children and even published a book of children's drawings. She ended up going back to Paris to finish off her career. But mother and child and politics, and then also the earth, were, the predominant themes in her practice.
Okay. I want to sort of talk a little bit about moments, because part of this whole series that we're doing is to talk about the lives and like the actual human behind this work. Philip, I'm going to start with you because you can speak on your own behalf. But when you think about your career and your life, were there any specific moments, pivotal moments that you can think of that kind of changed the way you approached your work and and thought about art more broadly?
To start, I think what was important, I was living abroad. I was living in London, and I was yet to make, transition from fashion to art. And I was, one of the most beautiful things for me being in London is, the cultural exposure there. And there was an important exhibition taking place organized by Edge of Arabia at the SOAS University in London. And that, I would say that exhibition for me was personally very important, to see artists from Saudi Arabia who are creating conceptual works. So I was exposed to conceptual art, in general, through museums abroad, but to see Saudi artists creating conceptual work at that time, I think it was 2008, was such an important moment for me. And there were years before I would create my first works that I exhibited with Hafiz Gallery. This was years before, but that's when I started thinking about creating work that is conceptual, based on ideas, rather than just be a painter, for example, which is something, I did think about for a while. So I would say that moment was important. Second important moment, it coincided with the changes happening here in my country, in Saudi Arabia. Again, I was still, I was living in London, a second period, and I was already, showing artwork, and my early work was, appropriation of photography and collage and digital print. And I was doing that for almost 3 years before, I took some time off to observe the changes that are happening in my country, politically, and the social and cultural implications of these political changes. And I decided to take some time off to distance myself from my early themes and to rethink the ideas behind my work. And that's, I think, was, a very, very important moment. And that's when I started thinking, I just went inwards. It was a time of a lot of healing and meditation for me, and connecting with my body as a woman and an artist in my 40s. And that's where the theme of exploration of the body and space kind of started.
Before we switch, before we ask you the same question, Filwa, I have a question about your fashion design, your sort of background in fashion design. Do you think of these as two distinct periods in your career where you're like, that I was over here doing one thing and now I'm very much doing a different thing? Or are you like, I'm doing the same thing, the final product, like I was making tabbouleh and now I'm making fattoush, but they're basically the same thing?
Come on, tabbouleh and fattoush are the same thing. You serve them together.
You can just mix them. I was going to say. Well, that's what happened to me, actually.
Yeah.
I mixed them. Yeah, I did think in that way in the beginning. And I think that it was in my head, I wanted, starting also, let's put it in a different way, deciding to become an artist at that point in my life, at a later age, and not having actually had a degree in fine art per se. Although, I did study fashion design and I did so many creative things afterwards. There was a part of me that did not understand immediately that it could be actually an interdisciplinary practice, and that fashion or the creation, construction of garments can become a tool in my artistic practice. And that, again, came later.
Myrna, I want to ask you the same question, but I want to ask about one particular moment you sort of alluded to when you were talking about 1967, but I'd love to know the story, because it's mentioned in the book, the story of Muna's first sculpture, which I believe is the Mother Earth
Mother
sculpture.
and child.
So I'd love to know a little bit about that, which is inspired in that moment, including the sort of the what's happening in Paris at the time and Palestine. So I'd love to sort of like dig into that a little bit.
So she did her first sculpture in Paris when she was at the Beaux-Arts, and it was Mother and Child. I think one of the most interesting things is she lived in a tiny room, so she really couldn't make these large scale
Paris
sculptures.
apartments are the size of shoeboxes.
Yeah, and I mean, she's a student, self-funding, but she did mother and child. But to go back, I think, aside from her, actually, a moment would be her leaving in the 60s and heading to Beirut. I think that another major moment that stayed with her and came up later, is well, there are two moments, but they're of the same thing, which is the Palestinian cause. I think she might have been around 4 or 5 in 48 when a lot of her family came in from Palestine. And she didn't grasp it then, but then sometime later, her elder brother died. And he was the one who had told her about the Palestinian struggle and the plight of the Palestinians and how this land was stolen from them and so on. So that came up again many years later. I mean, she was, forever, impacted by this. And then many years later, when she met and married her husband, she produced a lot of posters for the cause. I'd say another really, really major moment was when Muna became a mom. And that was 1978 when she had Dia, her only child. I think that changed so many things for her. And effectively, Muna was a single mother. When Arafat was told to go to Tunis, I think she didn't want to go with her husband, who was, with the PLO. So she took care of Dia for the rest of her life. Raised her alone between Amman and Beirut. And I think having Dia and raising Dia forever, impacted her.
I'd love to talk about, we talked a little bit about the Edge of Arabia and sort of the scene that emerge and changes. We've talked about Sharjah, but maybe Myrna will stay with you to talk a little bit about who was in that scene. Because single mom for sure, but not single in her community. So who was she surrounded by? Who influenced the way she thought about the world, the way she thought about her work, the way she thought about.
I know that Samia Halabi was a very good friend of hers.
Yeah, there's a beautiful picture of them in the book together. It's so nice.
From a few of Samia's posts on Instagram, you can really feel that Samia mourned the death of her friend. But the people who I think, forever inspired and, satisfied Muna's thought are the thinkers. Who were not just thinkers, but they were also creative practitioners. So people like Adonis, people like Kamal Bulata. And then let's not forget that Muna when she went back to Beirut, she taught at AUB. So there was a lot of fantastic interaction with her students as well. I think, and she was also friends, of course, with Muna Atasi of the Atasi Foundation, Mayla Atasi, Allah yarhama, Fatih Mudarris, Ziad Dalloul, and all of these people that I mentioned. Yes, indeed, Muna Atasi, for example, did own a gallery, but Muna is a magnet. She's a giant. And so are people like Kamal Bulata, who wrote about, Palestine and so on. So these are the people that, they were food, fodder for her brain.
Yeah. Filwa, how has the scene changed for you? I mean, hearing you talk about this, does it sound, because obviously you are a different generation, but is this sort of the world that you feel like you are in right now in Jeddah, where you are, or in Saudi more broadly, where you feel like this is a active, robust scene and there's all this like fodder for your brain, so to speak?
Honestly, yes. يعني I can talk يعني in terms of Saudi and the region, like the Gulf as well. It's very interesting time culturally. in Saudi, it's a renaissance of sorts, I would say. And it was exciting for me. And that's also one of the main reasons I decided to move back from London in 2018. Many other reasons, but this is one of them, to be part of the dynamic energy, of the cultural art scene here in Saudi that is, being constructed and being built, and we're witnessing it, at the same time. So, and for me, it was really interesting to meet artists from different regions of Saudi, very different from Jeddah, like Muhammad al-Faraj, for example, from Al-Hassa. I've never been actually there, unfortunately, but just meeting different Saudi artists with different thoughts, different background, having that exchange with them, having that conversation about what is happening in Saudi, about art in Saudi, was extremely fascinating and enriching for me. And Jeddah at one point was a center for the contemporary art scene. We had the Saudi Art Council's annual exhibition, 2139. I'm sure, Myrna, you know it as well. But in the last few years, Riyadh kind of became the cultural center, and a lot is happening there with the Binalis. We have the Islamic Binali here. We have Hijjanil as well. But yeah, things has changed, but it's still evolving and developing, and it's interesting times generally.
Amazing. Okay, I want to ask 4 last questions. And the first one is going to be about a specific work. I'm going to put you both on the spot. If you need some time to think about it, let me know. But I'd love to pick out at least one of the pieces in the book that maybe isn't like the greatest piece in the cover story and the one everybody needs to know about, but it's the one that for you keep on coming back to, where it really tickles you. And it really makes you smile or makes you think constantly. Does one come to mind for you?
Yeah, I have the book, and you know what? I'm going to find it and I'm going to show you.
Okay,
right.
so let's talk about these two. Why they make you smile.
Mikey, I'm a mom. I have 2 beautiful kids, Allah yahmihun, and I didn't need to know that Muna, one of like the core themes of Muna's practice is mother and child. I can feel it here. Okay, I can totally relate. It's like so fine, the touch between like sensuality and a bit of eroticism. Like it's so delicate, but I can feel that. I love the color very much. And she used to say when she found this certain green, I'm not sure if it's this one, she used to call it Jordanian jade. Okay. But anyway, and it's just, when you think about it, what I know now in my career about how to sculpt, and to think that this woman did that, from a block to bring it down to this, it's unbelievable. If you just look at, inside how she got it, it looks like it was born like this.
Yeah.
You don't think this was made. So I really appreciate this piece.
And then let's take the next one. Yeah.
The other one feels the same, but again, how, when I think about how would she know what it looks like on the inside, like what are the colors and the degradations on the inside, but she's managed to bring out so much from this, slab of stone.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's something. And Mikey, Muna, and Salwa Rawda Shair, are the only two female sculptors in the Arab world from that generation. Okay, they're not of the same generation, but let's just call them, modernists. There are no others. So to have done that, especially in a climate that didn't understand or appreciate abstraction so much, at least in Salwa Dashir's case, more so.
They had.
It's commendable.
Do you know if they had similar influences?
No, Salwa became mystified with Islamic geometry.
Yeah.
On a trip to Cairo in 1947, it just totally made sense to her. Like she totally understood the line, so much more, and she became, enthralled with Islamic geometry, which forever inspired her practice.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Mona doesn't have it.
Yeah, because like this piece, for example, to me has similarities to Salwa's work.
Yeah, they can sit together.
Yeah.
They can easily sit together.
Yeah. Before we keep on going, or maybe let's do Filwa's choice and then we'll come back to the question. I love this piece so much.
Yeah, why?
Okay, so I know nothing about I know next to nothing about textiles. The actual honest answer, I will be fully honest. The honest answer is I don't know why I love it. That's the honest answer. I look at it and I'm like, I want to touch it. I want to see how it's put together. The construction of it's beautiful.
Do you know, Mikey? I used to struggle with when I was writing, how would I describe an artwork?
Yeah.
And then I found the answer. It's how it makes you feel.
Yeah. Of course.
How does it make you feel?
Absolutely.
The interesting answer, so the shorter version of my answer to that question is, Kamin, I don't know. Because being able to understand and articulate your feelings is not always available to me. So, I mean, there's layers to this, right? There's the first ability is like, are you able to articulate the things that seem to be creating a reaction? Okay, great. You can admit that articulation. Then there's a level deeper with like, okay, can you actually follow that path and articulate how it makes you feel with confidence and without the fear of like, is this stupid, right? And then there's a layer deeper than that is like, can you understand the connections between those feelings and other things that have made you feel that way? But for this reason, I am unable to describe why I enjoy it so much.
I like about this piece that there's the awkwardness to it. So based on a lot of these works, they are like inspired by a specific space or a specific house. So they're containers. They're also bodies. If you think of the body mirroring that, the energy of the space is a container as well of our emotions and our feelings. But this particular piece came from, again, the idea of transitions between spaces. So it's a space you want to inhabit, but in a way, you don't know how. It doesn't maybe fit very well. You don't know where to enter it from. So there's a part of it that shows you that it's safe and it's carrying something, it's containing something. But on the other hand, it looks familiar, like a garment. But where would you get into it or wear it from? So, maybe that's the part you like, the awkwardness, the ambiguity of it.
But Filwa, I don't want to force you to talk about this one. Is there a different one that you think you would rather talk about?
Well, it's hard to choose because each project, it depends also on that moment in your career and your life and what it means. So the first early textile works were important, to me, that it was an important moment, like starting something different. But for example, the in-between project at Sharjah Art Foundation, the March project residency was also very special to me because I learned a lot in that project. And I met people that really kind of directed me in how to think about things. Because in the early works, I did already start doing sort of a philosophical research on space, architecture, etc., but always in connection to embodied experience. But the second project, which was the one at Sharjah, it was it gave me direction in the way I research and how to read, and to be more comfortable within this theme that I'm endlessly fascinated about. And it was a very, memorable experience, to be honest, an important one.
Cool. Okay, I want to do these. I want to explore one of my favorite sections of the book is the biographical section, which has these amazing personal photos. So Filwa, maybe let's start with you. Is there a photo a personal photo from this section that is your favorite? You just love the fact that it's in there. It brings you joy, or it brings you back to a moment that makes you smile.
I mean, I love the children, the ones when I was a child. So, it shows my interest in fashion, I think. Thinking about the idea of dressing up and imagination. And I think that's a big part where I started as an artist. It was always imagination and reading and trying to embody something or someone else. It just, kind of metamorphosed into a kind of an artistic practice in a philosophical way later on. But I think that's where it all started in a way.
I'm just looking at these photos and I'm thinking how important it is I'm a serial photographer, but how important it is to document, really. I mean, there from your, kiddie photos, and then there's so many others down there. You think they're random, but they actually tell us so much about you and your practice.
Absolutely.
You always need a visual, right? You always do.
It informs so much, really, in the bigger context of things in retrospective as well.
What about you?
Which photo do I like from Filwa's?
No, from Mona's book.
Look, I honestly, I feel we are so lucky to, Mikey, it was so difficult to get these images, get them in high res. I mentioned to you earlier, we were working on this book as her only daughter, Dia, was dying. Allah yarhamha, she died, and she didn't see the final result. So we were, dealing with issues like resolution. Dia was in hospital talking to us from the ICU, trying to work out, setting up her mother's estate, but also sending us high res. So we are so lucky to have these, but also know their approximate dates and times. I don't have a favorite, to be honest. I really appreciate some, and especially for someone like me, I'm crazy about Arab modernists. The fact that there's a photo of her with Kamal Bulata and Dia, against the three photos are with the same artwork, which is, I think, something about the letter Noon, variations. What is it?
Variations on the letter Noon.
The letter Noon.
Amazing.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think this sculpture suffered a couple of hits. There were a few pieces that were hit during the civil war and the Israeli invasion, and then it was moved. I think it went somewhere.
Amazing. Okay. 2 final questions, and I'll have them be a little rapid. Filwa, if there was a city or place that had the biggest influence on your work, what would it be?
2 cities for different reasons, Jeddah and London. So London was exposure and education in many ways. And Jeddah is still a source of inspiration, to be honest. So, and it comes because a lot of my work comes also from a personal place. So, it's connected to my life here in Jeddah.
What do you think people misunderstand about Jeddah as when they think about art that comes out of Jeddah?
I really believe it has a special energy. Cities by the sea as well always have that. But my favorite thing about Jeddah is that it's the multicultural, multi-ethnic. It's a melting pot, It's next to Mecca and Medina. Its people originally came from all over. For me, that's really beautiful. It informs our customs, our food, yeah. So I don't know if everyone would know this about Jeddah. You feel it more when you visit it and when you get to actually know Jeddah families, probably more. So you know more about the history.
Amazing.
Mikey, didn't you know Jeddah غير?
أكيد.
There you go. I
Hello?
didn't think about that catchphrase, but
Of course.
absolutely.
What about you, Myrna? What do you think is the city or place that affected or influenced Mona's work?
Beirut, a million times over Beirut.
Yeah.
For sure. And in the beginning and then towards the end, it was always Beirut.
Do you think Mona would have said he Beiruti?
No. منى كانت سلسلت لك her roots, which actually come from Syria. The family is originally Syrian, and then they settled there in the early part of the century. I think Mona would have said she's Arab. I think she would have been comfortable saying that. She was such an Arabist.
Amazing. Okay, last question. Since this is the Art Library podcast series, I'm going to ask both of you to recommend a book, or more than one. Filwa, you mentioned that you had some amazing reading lists. So what would be on your book recommendation list to a young aspiring artist who's interested in pursuing a career or expanding their understanding of art from the region?
For me, it would be hard to just narrow it down, but I think it's so important to have a diverse reading subject for artists. For me personally, it was the endless curiosity about the human condition. So at a very early age, in my teenage years, I was reading about philosophy and psychology, and it's that endless curiosity about why we are the way we are, why do we feel the way we feel, etc., etc. So I would recommend just to be a reader to start with. One of my all-time favorite books is The Poetics of Space. You probably heard about it by Gaston Bachelard. It's one of those books that I go back now and again and find it still very inspiring. More on contemporary architectural philosophy by Elizabeth Gross, an Australian philosopher. Volatile Bodies, Architecture from the Outside. These are books that I read over the past few years, and this is more within my theme, so I would not maybe recommend it for artists in general. I think artists should do their own homework and research.
Okay, cool. Myrna, take us away. What's on your list?
Obviously, they should be reading my books, Mikey.
كلهم. And no, fill your shelf.
But Mikey, honestly, I I definitely encourage and endorse reading everything.
Absolutely.
And I agree with Filwa that they should make, their decisions and their choices, but to definitely read, definitely. I would tell all aspiring artists to do one thing that we didn't do enough of, which is get out there and talk to the artists and the practitioners. When I think about, you know, I live here in Dubai, and Mona Atasi lives here. Okay, but there's Amira Jawahir in Saudi, in Jeddah. And then you have Nujum Al Ghanem here in the Emirates, and up until recently, we have Safiya bin Zagar in Jeddah. Allah yarhamah. I would talk to that generation because they were there and they did things before anyone else did. And these are our godmothers and godfathers. They basically laid the foundation for everything, where we are at today. If someone has the chance in Beirut to speak to Nadine Bekdash, who is the daughter of Janine Erbez, to speak to the kids of deceased Arab modernists and understand how we are where we are today, you have to look back to know where you are today, and that'll give you an idea of where we're going to go. And these people will no doubt tell these young artists that it's on you. And Filwa, you know this. It's on you. You are the documentarians of our time. So we are relying on you to give us an alternative history, the one that we don't find in textbooks. So I would say talk to these people.
Yeah. And to chart an alternative future.
Yeah.
Saraha. Thank you to you both. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is an honor
to
have you guys on the series.
Likewise. Thank you so much. And thank you, Filwa. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Myrna. It was so lovely to have this interview with you.
And thank you to Misk, of course.
Of course. Thanks.